Welcome back to NFL Nexus. Today, we are diving deep into day 2 of the NFL Combine. And let me tell you, this is the day where millions of dollars are won and lost in the blink of an eye. We're talking cornerbacks, safeties, and tight ends. So, who solidified their first-round grade and who left scouts with a whole lot of really tough questions? We've got all the risers and the fallers coming right up, so stick around. And hey, if you're a draft fanatic like me, you're in the right place, so make sure to hit that subscribe button. So let's get right into it, shall we? Day 2 of the Combine. This is where the premium athletes really take center stage. You've got the defensive backs. These are the guys tasked with shadowing the league's most explosive receivers. And then you have the tight ends, those matchup nightmares that have pretty much become the chess pieces of every modern offense. For a select few, their performance in Indy was an absolute rocket ship for their draft stock. But for others, well, it was a stumbling block that's going to have general managers second-guessing for weeks to come. All right, here's our game plan for today. We'll kick things off with why the Combine is such a high-stakes proving ground in the first place. Then we'll get to the good stuff, the risers from day 2, followed by the guys who might have underperformed. After that, we're going to put a spotlight on the very interesting case of Jadarian Price, and we'll finish up with our final verdict on what this all really means for the draft. Okay, before we start throwing around names, it is so crucial to understand the environment here. The NFL Combine is not just a track meet in shorts and a t-shirt. No. It's this meticulously scrutinized 4-day pressure cooker where every single tenth of a second, every inch of a vertical leap, and yeah, every answer in an interview can be the difference between a first-round contract and being a day 3 gamble. A player's entire physical and mental makeup is just laid bare for all 32 teams with millions, and I mean millions of dollars, hanging in the balance. All right, let's talk about the winners. Let's talk about the guys who made themselves some money. These are the prospects who came to Indianapolis with something to prove and left with a ton of buzz. They didn't just meet expectations, they completely shattered them, forcing scouts to scramble back to the game tape with a totally fresh perspective. You know, it all starts with a tape measure, and for some positions, these measurements are practically non-negotiable. For outside, or what we call boundary cornerbacks, teams just covet length. And that magic number? It's often 32-inch arms. Now, why is that? Well, think about it. Longer arms create a wider press window to jam receivers at the line of scrimmage, and they give a corner a much larger radius to deflect passes downfield. Julian Neal, standing at 6'2", with over 32-inch arms, he is the exact prototype. The Washington duo of Takario Davis and Ephesians Prysock also fit that mold perfectly, with Davis boasting the longest arms in the entire class. For safeties, guys like Deshaun Singleton and VJ Payne showed off the kind of height and frame that just screams they can handle the massive tight ends in today's NFL. And speaking of tight ends, Eli Raridan and Tanner Koziol, they have the frames that coaches just drool over, believing it can easily add 15 pounds of muscle without losing a step. Now, every so often at the Combine, a player delivers a performance that isn't just good, it's legendary. You know, it becomes a stuff of Combine lore that people talk about for years. This year, that player was Oregon tight end Kenyon Sadiq. He didn't just have a good day. He put on a historic, jaw-dropping show that has the entire league buzzing and completely reevaluating their draft boards.
And this tweet right here perfectly captures just how insane his performance was. Look, it's one thing for analysts like me to rave about a guy, but when the league's official social media account singles you out like this, you know you've made a serious statement. This isn't just typical craze. This is the NFL itself basically declaring that a potentially game-changing athlete has just arrived on the scene.
The numbers here are they're staggering. Let's let this sink in for a second. A 4.39-second 40-yard dash at 245 pounds. That is the best time ever by a tight end at the Combine, and it's faster than most of the wide receivers who ran this year. Add a 43.5-inch vertical, the second best ever, and an 11'1" broad jump, the third best ever. This isn't just athletic, it's a completely different stratosphere. He is a true unicorn, a rare specimen that offensive coordinators just dream of scheming up mismatches with. But Sadiq wasn't the only one turning heads, not by a long shot. Cornerback D'Angelo Pons reportedly had an incredible 43.5-inch vertical. His teammate Toriano Pride Jr. had the fastest 40-yard dash for all the cornerbacks. Safety Lorenzo Styles Jr., he silenced any questions about his speed with a blistering 4.27 40. At tight end, Eli Stauer somehow, someway, managed to outjump even Sadiq.
And then you have the drill masters. These are the guys who might not have had record-breaking numbers, but just looked flawless on the field. USC's Lake McCree was incredibly smooth in the gauntlet drill, which really tests a player's hands and their ability to track the ball. And then there was Chris Johnson, whose performance was really in a class of its own.
Now this slide highlights one of my absolute favorite scouting terms, teach tape. It is one of the highest compliments a player can possibly receive. It means their technique is so flawless, so fluid, that coaches can use the film of their drills as a literal instructional video to teach other players how to do it. It's like a musician playing a piece perfectly in tune. It speaks to incredible preparation, natural talent, and excellent coaching. It is a massive, massive stamp of approval from the scouts.
Now, for every athlete who shines, there's always another who struggles under those bright lights. The Combine can be a really harsh spotlight, and for these next prospects, their performance in Indianapolis created way more questions than answers. These are the players who may have seen their draft stock take a little bit of a hit.
And the contrast from someone like Chris Johnson just could not be more stark. This quote here on Iowa safety Xavier Nampa is absolutely brutal. A universally poor performance in the on-field drills is a massive red flag. It brings into question a player's hip flexibility, their change of direction skills, and their ability to move fluidly in space. I mean, all of which are critical traits for a safety. This is the kind of report that sends scouts scurrying back to the game tape, looking for flaws that this performance may have just put a giant magnifying glass on.
Let's talk about those thresholds again. NFL teams are meticulous about measurements. Take a guy like boundary corner Brandon Sissy. The ideal for his position is to be over 6 feet tall with arms longer than 32 inches. He came in just a little under on height, but the bigger concerns were his arm length and hand size, which were some of the smallest in the entire class. Now, why does that matter? It's simple physics, really. Shorter arms make it harder to jam a big receiver at the line, and smaller hands make it tougher to rip the ball away in one of those contested catch situations. These small measurements can have a really big impact on the field.
And the red flags, they came in all shapes and sizes. For Sam Roush, his short arms raised serious questions about his ability to be an effective blocking tight end. Oscar Delp didn't even get to compete because of a foot fracture that was discovered in his medicals. A huge question mark. Miles Kitzelman tested in what scouts call the dead zone for tight end athleticism. This is basically a statistical range where there's almost no historical precedent for a player with those testing numbers succeeding in the NFL. I mean, that's tough. Even Ephesians Prysock, with his great length, looked like a very raw project in drills. And Riley Nowakowski, who is known for his blocking, struggled in the blocking drills. It just goes to show you, what you're known for doesn't matter if you can't show it at the Combine. Okay, let's pivot from that broad view for a second and zoom in on a specific case study that really shows the Combine is so much more than just running and jumping. The story of Notre Dame running back Jadarian Price, and particularly his interactions with the Denver Broncos, really highlights just how critical those team interviews and character evaluations are in this whole draft process. After his formal meeting with the Broncos, Price came away feeling a positive connection. Now, it sounds simple, but this is a huge part of the process. In these short 15-minute interviews, teams are trying to get a feel for a player's personality, their football IQ, how they'd fit in the locker room, and how they handle pressure. For Price to come away feeling that vibe is a really significant indicator of mutual interest. The absolute key to Price's value is his versatility. Yeah, the rushing stats are impressive for sure, but the kick return numbers, that's what makes him special. 2 touchdowns and a nearly 40-yard average per return, that is game-breaking stuff. In a league where every single yard on special teams matters, having a player who can contribute in the backfield and as a home run threat in the return game is just a massive bonus. And this quote from GM George Paton just perfectly encapsulates what the Broncos are looking for. They want players who are wired the right way, guys for whom football is the #1 priority. Price actually had the chance to transfer from a really crowded backfield at Notre Dame, but he stayed. He told teams he believed it was the right place for his development. That demonstrates loyalty, perseverance, and a focus on the long term over a quick opportunity. That is exactly the kind of character trait that gets a player a big check mark on the Broncos draft board.
And speaking of support, we'd love it if you'd support our channel, NFL Nexus. We've put together some really amazing, detailed NFL-themed coloring books. They're perfect for the young fans in your life, your kids, your grandkids, or honestly, they're even great for adults who just want to de-stress a little bit. You can check them out by scanning the QR code on your screen or by clicking the link we've put right at the top of the description. We really appreciate all your support.
So, after all that, what's the final verdict? What does all this data actually mean? Well, the most important thing to remember, and I really can't stress this enough, is that the NFL Combine is just one data point. It's a significant one for sure, but it is just one piece of a very large and very complex evaluation puzzle.
You have to look at the whole process. A player's evaluation begins with years of college game tape. That is always number one. Then you have the All-Star games like the Senior Bowl. Then comes the Combine. And after that, you still have pro days on their home turf, and finally private workouts and one-on-one interviews with teams. A great combine can make a scout go back and rewatch the tape to see if they missed something. And a bad combine, it can confirm negative suspicions they might have already had from the tape. But the film, what a player does in actual football games, that remains king.
So the ultimate takeaway here is all about context. A great workout doesn't automatically make you a great football player, and a bad one certainly doesn't make you a bad one. It's all just part of building the complete player profile. Kenyon Sadiq's numbers were historic, absolutely. But now every team is going back to his Oregon tape to ask, okay, but does he play 4.39 fast? Does he use that incredible vertical and contested catch situations? Conversely, a player like Xavier Nwankpa, who drilled poorly, might have fantastic game film that shows instincts and playmaking ability that just didn't show up in a sterile drill environment. It's all part of the big picture.
And now, of course, we want to hear from you. After seeing all this, which riser do you think is going to be an absolute steal on draft day? And on the flip side, which of these underperformers do you still believe in? Who is going to prove all the doubters wrong at the next level? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below. We really do read every single one.
That is going to do it for our deep dive into Day 2 of the NFL Combine. Thank you so much for watching NFL Nexus. If you enjoyed this breakdown, please don't forget to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our analysis as we get closer and closer to the NFL Draft. We'll see you next time.